Hey, good evening. Thank you for joining us. I know that we normally do this on a Saturday, but we're here on Sunday. There's a lot going on with the app. We're trying a lot of things, so it's taking up some time. But I'm so glad to see that some of you are here. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday evening and for giving us some of that time. The idea with this conversation is to discuss absolutely anything. So, to answer all of the questions that you might have and to discuss anything that you might want to ask or you might want to discuss about, maybe about the news, about the app we've launched, about the kind of journalism that we're doing right now. Haywire is here. Hello, Haywire. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really nice of you to always be present whenever we do these lives. It makes me really happy. Akhilesh Gautam says good evening. Nixon Pinto is here already, who says commitment issues. Are you talking about my commitment issues? Um, we also have Joey Freddy. You're not late. So Neil has only started talking this week. He's now 1.5 years old. And his first word, believe it or not, is auto. And he's completely obsessed with autos right now. So he's saying auto, auto, auto all the time. It's really cute. I intend to take him on an auto ride fairly soon so he can, enjoy the auto as well. Who else do we have? Rahul Kumar. Um, hey Wired, I've just made you a standard moderator on the channel. Congratulations and thank you for your support and for always being here. Basically means that you can moderate some of the people on the chat, just like Shelly does. Remember, we don't penalize people for opinions, however harsh those opinions may be. We do penalize bad language and, gully galoch, basically. That's the only thing that we're against. Good evening, Shelby Schaffmeister. Always good to see you on screen. What you do more powerfully. Thank you so much, Schaffmeister. Thank you for joining in. It's been such a massive week with Parliament that I don't know where the week went. Right, so it was Friday, and the team and I were actually writing the news on the app, and I suddenly realized it was Friday, and I was like, where did the week go? It just completely vanished because we spent all of our time tracking Parliament, and it just slipped by. Sarthak Kumar is here. He says, we miss you on television, but you're doing a good job on YouTube. Check out our app. That's where most of our energy is going right now. Let me know what you think of it. It's called Beatroot. You can see the logo there. It's called Beatroot. So if you look for Beatroot News on the App Store, either on your iOS phone, you can take a look at Beatroot News and download it on your phone. Let me see who else. Hanif says, good evening. Good to be on this live chat. Thanks for joining us, Hanif. Ivan says, do not mean to be personal. Is hubby a media person too? As good as you. Well, he's better than me. He's more than a media person. He's an entrepreneur and a media person and a talent manager and a person who runs business. So he's very excellent at everything he does. Vamesh Krishna says, hello. Hi, Vamesh. Hey, White, could you please help us understand some of the bills that are passed? There's a lot of information. I've spent a lot of time over the last 1 week trying to digest that information. There's such a lot. Okay, so let me take you through. Tintun has come. Thank you so much. Let me take you through some of the bills, right? I've made a list because I had intended on doing like a video about it. To take you through some of the things that have not only been passed by Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, but have also received the signature of the president already. So, sorry, Phoebe. So they've already become laws. So one is, of course, been tabled before Lok Sabha is the complete overhaul of the criminal code in India. So the fact that we used to have the Indian Penal Code 1860. I had to switch off the AC because I know it was loud. It's now called the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Then we had the criminal code procedure, the CRPC, which is now the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita. And then we had the Evidence Act, which basically obviously lists out how we deal with evidence. That has now become the Bharatiya Sakshya Bill. Sakshya Bill. I hope I said that right. Now, if you're saying, oh my God, she pronounces that so badly, is because I grew up in the South, and this, my friend, is Hindi imposition. Because you have changed the name of these three very important parts of our criminal code, which all of us have to use, to Hindi words. When not all of our country speaks Hindi. So hashtag stop Hindi imposition. Just reading a few more messages before we go forward. We have Aziz Ahmad. Glad you're alive. Congratulations on the app. Keep going. Thanks, Aziz. Thanks so much. Going back to the three things that have been changed. So there's a lot of unpacking to do in the criminal code procedure that has been changed, but the good thing about that is that it has not been passed. It's just been tabled in the Lok Sabha. It'll probably go to a committee, which means that we'll probably see it in the next session of Parliament. And so that gives people enough time to look at the drafts and actually analyze it. Couple of things. One, sedition. The Home Minister announced that sedition has actually been removed and dropped, which is great because sedition is a British era law that was actually used to punish and subjugate any sort of, dissent against the British government. And various governments have used it since then to trouble citizens who question them. But while they have dropped sedition as it was in the IPC, it has been introduced in another place under another law, and it is justice strenuous. So there's a lot of sleight of hand that we need to look at in all of this, and so it's going to take some unpacking. So I've not really fully broken all of it down, and we're going to need for the legal experts to do it completely, and then we will tie up with some legal experts and actually pass on that information to you. The other things that have been moved in, and this is really important, right? There is a law about how we choose our election commissioners. Now, remember, when we go into an election, the government ceases to have power during an election because they're also contesting. So the election commission, run by the election commissioners, become the most powerful body in government. We've seen also in the past issues with the election commission not being entirely fair. Now, there was a court case in which the Supreme Court decided that the manner in which we need to choose election commissioners in India will be by a committee that advises the President of India. That committee will consist of the Prime Minister, one leader of the opposition, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, this brings in 3 points of view. 1, government of the day. 2, opposition of the day. And 3, an independent voice in the Chief Justice who also understands the law and also understands our parliamentary democracy really, really well. And the interpretation of the rights that citizens get as per our constitution. The government has brought in a new bill on the penultimate day of Parliament. They introduced a bill that in effect replaces the Chief Justice of India with a cabinet minister. And this was really weird because then it means that the election commissioner will be chosen by the Prime Minister of India, one leader of opposition, and a cabinet minister who effectively reports to the Prime Minister of India. So you could have the Prime Minister with, say, Smriti Irani or a Piyush Goyal, or one of his ministers who will agree with him. So then it becomes a 2-1, and the leader of the opposition is pointless because he can never override what the other two are saying. And effectively, what will happen is the government of the day will choose the election commissioner, who incidentally will retire in February. An general election will be announced in March. Voting will happen in April, and results will be announced in May. Even if someone takes this back to the Supreme Court, the pendency or the delay of actually listing cases in the Supreme Court has showed us that we might not get an answer before May next year. And if that's the case, there are questions to be answered and asked about next year's election. There were 23 bills that were actually tabled before Parliament, including the Cinematograph Amendment Bill, Multi-State Cooperative Societies. There was a Jan Vishwas Bill. There was the government of the national capital. As you know, that whole Delhi Ordinance story. So let me take you through that. But before I go to the Delhi Ordinance, let me quickly also read out some more messages. Vishnu T, according to you, do you think there is a strategy for opposition beyond bringing Modi to Parliament? The opposition strategy. I can take you through why I don't believe they did a very good job. Shell D says, how many bills have been sent to standing committee? None at all, actually. Nixon Pinto, do Christians in India have political voice in the country? If yes, who? If not, why? What are the BJP's opinions on minority appeasement? Okay. So as per the constitution, there were 2 seats reserved for Anglo-Indians. I think that has been removed since then. Off the top of my head, and I don't know all the parliamentarians, Derek O'Brien is in parliament. There aren't too many though, because it's a very small population. And so it's not generally in the interest to quote that population at this point. Ankit says, do you think the government, especially the Prime Minister, effectively addressed the Manipur issue? No. I don't think the government addressed Manipur adequately. I don't think the opposition addressed Manipur adequately. I don't believe that Manipur was given the attention it deserved in Parliament. What it was an opportunity for both opposition and government to basically, make noise about their own political agendas. Can this bill be challenged in Supreme Court? Yes, it can, but the question is, how long will that take? The Election Commission one. Yes, that's my answer. Hey, Wyatt, is Smriti Irani at all doing any justice to opposition and women and child? You know the answer to that question. Personally, I would say no. One-man army, man is Nehruji opposed to Supreme Court judge in this group. I don't understand that question. I'm sorry. What are the winning lottery numbers for next week's national lottery? Okay, I don't know. I wish I did though. Let me see, what other messages do we have? Okay, let me see. Okay, so then we know the Delhi the Ordinance Bill, right? So it's called the Government of National Capital of Delhi Amendment Bill 2023. This got a lot of attention because remember the Delhi, there's always been. Okay, so if I can take a minute, I will break this down for you, right? So Delhi is special compared to all the other states because it used to be a union territory. Then it got changed into a state, and it is a state with an elected government. But within Delhi, you have Lutyens. Lutyens is a special part of Delhi because it houses government ministers, the Prime Minister, the Supreme Court. The senior members of the armed forces, they all live in that part of Delhi. And that part of Delhi then has different security that is run by the Home Ministry. It has, it's looked after differently than the rest of the city. So you can't necessarily have a government that has a completely free hand in Delhi because it's also the seat of power for the entire central government. And so there needs to be a sort of understanding between central government and a state government in Delhi. Now, as we know, the Arvind Kejriwal state government and the Narendra Modi central government have always been on loggerheads about how much the Lieutenant Governor or the LG, how much power he has to push back on things that the state government has decided upon. And we've seen over the years, Arvind Kejriwal sitting dharna on the LG's office, and successive LGs, they've changed successive LGs, but this continued to be a problem for him. He then went to Supreme Court because the LG was not clearing transfers and positions and appointments of officers, IAS officers within the Delhi government. And so Arvind Kejriwal went to Supreme Court asking for the fact that if I'm the democratically elected government of Delhi, I should have the ability to make these decisions. So when he did that, finally at the end of the High Court, Supreme Court, finally at the end of it, the Supreme Court decided that yes, the Delhi government should have the final say on appointment of officers and transfer of officers. A huge win for the Arvind Kejriwal government. Almost immediately after that, the central government changed the law and introduced a new law in the form of an ordinance. Now, what is an ordinance? An ordinance is a law introduced by the central government when something needs to be done in an emergency and you cannot wait for Parliament to convene in the next session. So you bring in an ordinance, the ordinance becomes the law until the next session of Parliament, and it has to be passed in Parliament in that session, otherwise the ordinance lapses, because the only way to make laws in our country is to pass it in Parliament. So this ordinance was brought in, and then Arvind Kejriwal campaigned with the entire opposition. Specifically, he had some trouble bringing the Congress on board, and they all came on board and decided that yes, we'll all support you, and we'll make sure this ordinance does not become a law. But it turns out that the brute majority numbers in Lok Sabha, and then in Rajya Sabha, what happened is the opposition walked out because I think they were or they were protesting against Manipur. Basically they were demanding a conversation on Manipur, and in that commotion, Rajya Sabha also. There was debate on this particular bill, and the opposition brought in all of its numbers, including those who were unwell, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was brought in a wheelchair. There were some people brought in on ambulances just so they could vote, but still they just couldn't have the numbers, and that bill finally passed. And so now, as the bill stands, the Delhi government does not have the final say on the transfer and appointment of its own officers. Let me see, what are the, okay. Janani says, how bad is the Hindutva movement in India currently? I think that's subjective for everyone to decide how comfortable or how uncomfortable you are with the way things are right now. Shell D, do you like, just share it, okay. Pavandeep says, the reason for you leaving the Times Group. Oh gosh, that I left the Times Group 4 years ago. And if you switch on any of their television channels right now, the reason is there for you to see. Ankit, whose speech was the worst, Rahul Gandhi or Modiji's? Oh, don't get me started, dude. I felt personally, and I know people disagree with me, I felt personally that Rahul Gandhi's speech could have been better prepared and better structured. And I thought the Prime Minister's speech was better strategized, but could have said more about Manipur and been more on point there. Maggie, to me, the dirt that media could possibly spread in journalism is at saturation point. Voters are more aware of the present situation. They are speaking out openly. What's your take? I think it'd be interesting to see how next year's election plays out. If you're saying that people are sort of puckered by the media, they reach the saturation point of how much the media can lie to them, and so they know what it is they want to do. We'll be able to see it in elections. Maybe in the state elections that will take place before. Remember, the one thing we should caution ourselves about is to not believe so much what you read on social media, because a large number of voters in this country are not on your Twitter, and they turn out to feel something completely different. Haywire, Telegraph calls out the government's gimmicks. Are they under a different authority? Most mainstream media. So, who owns the Telegraph? Let's ask that question. The owners of the Telegraph in India are ABP, Anand Bazar Patrika, which also has, incidentally, ABP News Hindi, ABP News Bangla, ABP News Marathi, ABP News Gujarati. You've seen how they do. So, there's the answer. Quasar Supernova says, I feel IPC 295A religious sentiment should be scrapped. Here's the thing, right? I'll give you an example. Right now, Sweden is having a very interesting issue. Now, in Europe, especially Scandinavia, they see freedom of speech as absolute. In India, we don't see freedom of speech as absolute. So someone in a protest in Sweden burnt a Quran, sort of ripped out the pages and burnt it in public view in protest. Now, in Sweden, per se, that's okay, because those are their laws, but it hurt a lot of people across the world. Iraq was really upset. The Gulf was really upset. We've seen counter-protests in Iraq. We've seen people attack Swedish embassies. Sweden is also now, and to support Sweden, then in other parts of Europe, we had other people burn other Qurans, right? So Sweden is actually considering changing that law at this point. Here's the question, right? When we live in a society, let's set aside the law, let's set aside all of these things. When we live in a society, should we be considerate about offending other people's feelings? And we know specifically in India that, we know specifically in India, for example, that people take their religion very seriously. People take their religion very personally. And it becomes an issue. Phoebe's working because someone's at the door. Let me see if I get that. Shh, Phoebe. Okay. As a journalist, how do you read if this saffron government? Sorry, I missed that. It went off somewhere. Okay, so we have a question from Sunil KR who says, how do you read whether the saffron government is returning in 2024? So this is what I see. Yes, the Prime Minister right now is the most popular political leader in the country, hands down, by a long shot. There is the number two. I don't know really if you ask me who the number two, second most popular leader is, but they're far. The gap is really wide. The BJP, the Home Minister Amit Shah has become an extremely astute strategist. If you actually look at how he has run this very tricky monsoon session of Parliament, where they had a ton of bills to pass, which they passed, where they had a really tricky Manipur issue, which the Prime Minister was forced to address on the first day of the monsoon session, which they managed really well. So they've gone through the monsoon session. The Prime Minister has spoken, but it hasn't really damaged them. They haven't really gotten rid of the Chief Minister. They've passed all of their bills. They've handled the opposition really well. So he's sort of become a really astute strategist in Parliament. Just as he's always been a very astute strategist with elections, right? So I think they're formidable. The pair is extremely formidable when it comes to winning elections, and the opposition is really going to have to do something amazing because just if you're suggesting that popularity has peaked, you're saying that okay, so the Prime Minister has peaked in terms of his popularity and it's only going to wane from now, but that's not enough. You will be, I mean, the country will need a viable option of an opposition, which it doesn't have at this point, because the opposition is not really, even from what they did in Parliament recently, it did not seem like they were very good at putting together a strategy together. So we'll take more from the opposition to be able to give the BJP any run at all. And we've seen another thing about the BJP. If you look at the Gujarat elections, right, it was a given that the BJP was going to win. The Congress wasn't, for argument's sake, wasn't even trying to win that election because they just felt that okay, it's not going to happen, and they focused on other states. But the BJP, even though they knew they were definitely going to win, they didn't stop or slow down at all. They gave it everything, like they would in a do or die fight. And I think that is really something. Why did the Prime Minister speak for only 4 minutes? Because he could. And he could speak for 4 minutes, and that was enough. And the opposition had walked out, and so there was nobody to stop him or demand more from him. Rajasthan government has cancelled this year's university student elections. Do you think the Congress is here on the back foot? Actually, so personally, I find that when student elections are cancelled, it sort of robs students from their first experience of democracy, which is really an important part of growing up or becoming an adult in a democracy. Agnello says, why do mainstream media, by the way, why does the mainstream media, by way of being balanced, ultimately let the BJP off the hook? So they're all afraid. Okay, let me see. Okay, P4NDA says I should use a road mic. That's possibly true. I'll try and get one. Nixon Pinto says, which government in India has been most productive according to you? So see, different governments have been productive in different areas, right? So India from 1947 to today has moved massively. The UPA government's contribution, I believe, was to sort of shockproof our economy from the markets and the crashes of the US, particularly in 2008, and also to open up our market for investment, which we're still enjoying today. This government's contribution for me has been UPI, sort of broad-basing banking, so that through UPI, I mean, everybody from the guy you buy your vegetables from to the people who work in your house are all using Google Pay, which means they're all formally moving money in the economy, which used to earlier be cash, and I think that's massive. It's a huge thing that they've really managed to leverage technology and mobile technology. First of all, put mobile technology in everybody's hands and then leverage it, 4G, leverage it to get people onto the formal banking system, which is amazing. I love that. And I think we should give credit to this government for having done that really, really well. Tanveer says, can you make an episode on the new amendments? We should, and we'll try and do that. Shuffmeister says, speaking for only 2 hours and fleetingly mentioning Manipur. Bring Neil and Phoebe on camera. So right now, Neil has sat down to have his dinner, and Phoebe is scratching the door because she's a rubbish girl. So there's someone called Allied Manager who's asked a question that one of my moderators has pulled down, and it is, how much money do you make and why can't you be a Godi anchor? So I don't make a lot of money. I wish I did though. And a lot of the money that I make, so I make money, and I'll tell you guys, so I make money primarily from speaking at events and from moderating discussions and from being a motivational speaker. So I charge to be able to go to an event and speak at that event. I use that money to pay the salary of my news team. That's how it's been working this entire time that you've been seeing through COVID and all of this. This is how it's been working so far. The other thing we do is we do what I call allied content with brands. So we don't run ads on any of our news, whether it's on the app or some Instagram or on YouTube, but we do allied content. So if there is a brand, for example, who wants to do work in the area of sustainability, environment, or LGBTQ rights or women's rights, then we sort of work with them. But as long as it is an allied purpose, we don't just run anything. So we're very picky about that. So that's the other thing that we do. So far, that's what we've been running in order to make our money. And we've been using the money to pay the salaries of our team. I also take a salary. So that is how I make money. I can't be a Godi anchor because I'd be really shit at it. We saw lots of data of CMIE of declining employment rates in the last few years. Have the numbers improved? So the government numbers are showing a sharp improvement. Rishi says, me and my wife love your work. Oh, thank you so much. Ivan, what's your take on India? So India, the alliance of the opposition. So I believe that they need to be putting in more strategy work and not being worried about. I read one analysis from Neerja Chaudhary, who is a very senior political journalist who I respect deeply. She was talking about how Amit Shah is going after, the BJP is sort of going after Rahul Gandhi particularly because they want to make it, the BJP wants to make it a Rahul versus Modi fight because they want to irk the rest of the opposition. Now, when the opposition has come together as India, they all want to be equal and they don't want to sort of see Rahul Gandhi as the leader because everybody wants an opportunity to sort of stick their flag into it and maybe be a prime ministerial candidate, and they don't want to see themselves as just standing behind Rahul Gandhi. So the more the BJP makes it about Rahul Gandhi, the more they are likely to upset the other opposition partners. It also goes to show that the opposition partners have not been able to set aside their differences and we sort of reach an understanding on who their leader is going to be, which is possibly something that's going to hurt them in the future. I don't understand. What's the government supposed to prove with the outburst on Uniform Civil Code? Leave about religious minorities or tribals are unlikely. So it's interesting. Uniform. So this is what I think, right? Do I believe that a Uniform Civil Code should come? Yes, because I genuinely believe that there are a lot of problems in our personal laws at this point, and those problems are normally unfair to women. And should all the women in our country have the same rights, irrespective of their religion? 100%. And how do we do that? By reforming our personal laws, right? Now, it's a huge job. Various governments, like even the founding parents who wrote our constitution, said this ought to be done. But because it was so tricky, they said we don't have the time to do it right now. Somebody should do it in the future. And that future has not come because we've not had a government who's had the ability to actually put it through. Maybe this government has the brute force, the numbers to do it. But it's tricky, like you said, because there are tribal communities that need to be taken into consideration. Parsi community, Muslim community, Christian community, all of these need to be brought on board, which means you need to have conversations. You need to consult. You need to get everybody on board in some way or the other before you do this. The intentions need to be right. I don't believe it can be done before the next election. And so I believe that it was just it was sort of a dog whistle, right? You just made a noise to see what reaction you get. Also, so that it helps the campaign going forward, because remember, the BJP in its manifesto in 2019 put out Ram Mandir, which they have done. In January they will inaugurate. The abrogation of 370, which they have done 4 years hence. And the last thing was Uniform Civil Code. So they've sort of announced it so they can go into the election saying, hey, we've announced it's going to happen if you vote us back in. So I think that was the whole point of that announcement. But I want to say, this is my personal analysis. I could be wrong. I'm not always wrong, though. I'm rarely wrong, as many things. Okay. How does the current political climate affect your ability to do your job? It makes it very, very tricky to be a journalist, and to be completely honest as a journalist. I'll be honest with you. Why is UPI better than cash? Because it's formal and you can actually track how much money is going where. So even if you're paying the person who works in your home as a cook, if you're paying them by UPI, it's moving within a formal system that can be tracked and can be understood better. And so this whole idea that during demonetization, which I believe is completely wrong, and UPI has done what demonetization sort of set out to do. It was a failed exercise. We've not had a single reason, even now after all these years, as to why that needed to have happened. Okay, so put a pin in demonetization. But during demonetization, there was this whole argument that this entire cash economy is black, right? We can now understand by the use of UPI that it's not black. These are genuine people. They're not like evil money launderers, right? They're your cooks, your maids, your watchmen, your tomato wala, your doodh wala, who's actually able to then take that UPI and pay other people with it. So it's money that is circulating, that you can track, you can understand, you can build policy for, you can make laws for, you can actually help them out, because you know now how much money is moving in each person's UPI, right? Do you feel there will be conscious efforts to control inflation? So inflation is actually really interestingly sky high, right? If you see where the gas cylinder is, where petrol is, where diesel is, where vegetables are at this point, it's atrocious, quite frankly. Governments have fallen for less. But when the inflation number comes from the government, it's like at 4% or 5%, which I'm really surprised about. So I don't know how those numbers are working right now, and who's doing the calculation. Agnello, thank you so much for that. Guys, remember, you can use our super chat feature as well if you want to contribute to our team. We'd really appreciate it. The money will be used to pay salaries and to improve our equipment and buy that mic that one of you suggested that I should use. In the current, what do you think would be the best course of action to adopt by the opposition to avoid election rigging? Ooh, it's very hard. You know what the tricky part about it is, right? Is the election funding in terms of election bonds goes almost entirely to the BJP. And so the BJP has access to far more funds than these other guys. And more than rigging, the size of campaigns, and I can tell you from the South that each candidate spends upwards of 5 or 6 crore rupees, money that they have to borrow in order to contest an election, and if they lose, then they have to pay that money back. So it is very tricky, and I don't know if rigging. I mean, there's been no evidence of rigging of EVMs so far. I mean, we have the opposition who comes out and says it all the time, but nobody has been able to submit any evidence. And when we see evidence, then maybe we should have that conversation. Given Aam Aadmi Party has majority in Delhi and Punjab, what if these MPs resign and get elected again? Aam Aadmi Party has majority in Delhi, Punjab assemblies. The MPs are in parliament. I'm not really sure what you're saying about it. Suspension of opposition MPs. Definitely sad. No, so they will either go to court or wait for the privilege committee to give their, understanding, and then give their ruling, and then take that ruling to court. Appreciate your work a lot. Wish you all the best. Thank you so much. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. I have to wrap up because we're nearly out of time, but we will be here every weekend. So a couple of things I want to tell you before we go. Please download the Beatroot News app. You can see the logo at the corner of your screen. It's called Beatroot News, and my team and I sit and write the news on the Beatroot News app on a daily basis. It's written in a respectful manner. We prioritize and fact check everything we write. It's meant to be clean. There are no pop-ups, there are no ads. We don't take any personal information from you. There are no algorithms right now. It's news in its purest form. Please download it. We've just managed our linking, which also means that when you're reading something on the app, if you want to share it with a friend or a family member or an uncle on WhatsApp, you can do that as well. So do that, share it on social media, share the stories that you're reading on the Beatroot News app on WhatsApp as well with friends and family. Please evangelize and ask people you know to download the app as well. It would really help us out. It is our attempt to do news the way it is really meant to be done. And we've put our heart and soul into it. I've put my heart and soul into it. So I really hope that you like it. Please send me feedback. I'm reading the feedback. So when you download the Beatroot News app, there is a Right to Faye tab. I read those emails myself personally, every single one of them. So please do write to us regularly and let us know how we can improve the app so we can improve your experience. I'm going to log off now, but it's been a pleasure to chat with you. I will be here next week, and through the week, we're going to put out as many videos as we can explaining the news and explaining all of the laws that have been brought in. Okay. Thank you so much, Alok, for downloading the app. Send me a message. Let me know how we can make it better. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.